Welcome to Mom and Mind, where we dive into all aspects of perinatal mental health and wellness related to pregnancy, birth, loss, postpartum, and new parenthood. It's so much more than postpartum depression. We raise the volume on all of these topics in the hopes that someday everyone will have the support and info that they deserve before they need it. Please note this podcast is not a replacement for treatment by a professional or professional training. Welcome. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On this episode, we are going to be talking with Jessica Mirisis, who is sharing her personal story. And she's going to give us some details about what happened for her over the span of several years and how she was really suffering, looking for help, trying to advocate for herself, and her providers were not hearing her and were not giving the help she needed. And her symptoms continued, both with her first birth, and her symptoms continued for several years between two different pregnancies and births, to the point where things got really, really difficult for her. So you're going to hear some of the things that she experienced. Some might be sensitive for some folks to hear. And also what's really amazing is that through these years that she was suffering, she did find healing and is finding healing now. Jessica lives in Massachusetts. She is a mom to 3 girls, an RN, and she and her husband own 2 businesses. So let's welcome Jessica. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Dr. Kat. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to share your story. I think it's so empowering, one, to be able to tell your story, but also empowering for others to hear, what people went through and how they are recovering. So I'm sure this is going to be both supportive, hopefully for you, but also for others. Yeah, so thank you for that. Yeah, begin wherever you'd like and tell us your story from your beginning.
Oh my goodness, where do I start? I guess I should start off explaining that I have 3 girls. The oldest one is my stepdaughter, and then I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So when I refer to my first baby, that's actually my 6-year-old.
Okay, gotcha.
It can be kind of confusing. Yeah. So my daughter was born May 4th, 2012. And the year before that, I had just finished graduating nursing school. I had married my husband, passed my board. We had bought a house. So there's kind of a lot going on.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I found out I was pregnant and I was so excited, like beyond excited. I was very, very nauseous for, I would say, about 12 to 14 weeks of it. That made it tough right off the bat. It's kind of like, I'm sick all the time. It doesn't seem like what you think it will be.
Right.
Like moms that have been pregnant are like, oh, you're pregnant and you're glowing and yada, yada, yada. It wasn't like that for me. It was more like sick to my stomach the whole time. And then right before Christmas, we found out that we were having a girl, and I was absolutely beyond excited because I've always wanted to have a little girl. Always. And then, everything was pretty fine during the 2nd trimester, 3rd trimester, pretty basic stuff. When I went into labor, I actually was out. And my labor was a very slow, long process. I was 4 days early, and I was driving to my mom's house because we were going to go somewhere. I forget where. And I got this really sharp contraction to the point where I had to actually pull over. And I ended up making it to my mom's house, and she was like, this will take forever. This will take forever. And we ended up going shopping while all this was happening to me, which probably was not a very good idea. But my water never broke or anything. So I just was like, I guess I'm just going to wait and see how it goes. So I was in labor all day that day. And that night I was in so much pain. I called the hospital and I had a midwife. I told her, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm really uncomfortable. And she's like, well, if your water hasn't broke or if your contractions aren't at least so many minutes apart, which they weren't because I was timing them, I was watching them. She said, you can come in, but you're probably going to be fine home. So I just said, I'll wait a little longer, wait it out. And I kind of spent the night, in the shower, out of the shower, because the shower was the best. I don't know why, but it was great.
Right.
And then around probably 11:30 midnight, I got up to go to the bathroom and my water broke. Okay. So I was like, oh, thank God we can go to the hospital now.
Yeah. And again, how many weeks along were you again?
I was right at the end. She was 4 days early.
Oh, okay. All right.
She was due the 8th and she was born the 4th. So
okay.
I woke my husband up and he was like, he's so funny. I'm like, I'm in labor. I'm so uncomfortable. I'm walking around, waiting to go. Where is he? I go in the bedroom and he's picking out what shirt he's going to wear. I was like, can you hurry up, please?
Right.
We got to get going. So we go to the hospital. I was 5 centimeters dilated, and the midwife was like, oh, wow, you really were in labor. You came a long way by yourself. And I was like, yeah, well, I called and tried to say something, but I got up to my room. I had an epidural, and I was much more comfortable after my epidural. I actually was able to fall asleep for a few hours. So that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I woke up. It was probably like 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30. I started pushing. I pushed for like an hour and a half, but my daughter was facing upward when she was born.
Oh, yeah.
So they tell me that face up is actually harder to push out, I guess.
Yeah.
So I did that. And, when she came out, I didn't have that immediate, like, oh my gosh, this is my baby. Everything is so wonderful feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Just because for me, there was so much going on. And I ended up having a hemorrhage.
Oh.
And I lost a lot of blood. And that like greatly affected like the first few weeks home with my daughter. Iron level was like a 7 point something, to the point where they almost gave me a blood transfusion. That's how much blood I lost. So, I go home. I'm trying to breastfeed. That's hard in itself. Any mothers that breastfeed, I like tell them, I'm like, you're awesome, because it is so hard. Yeah. It really is. It's like the hardest thing. And if you can do it, that's great. I personally couldn't, but I say feeding your baby formula is better than not feeding them at all.
Right. So it sounds like you did try, and then it was not working for any number of reasons. So you switched.
Yeah. It's between like pumping and being up at night, and it was painful. And eventually, like, I did it for probably about 6 weeks, and then I switched.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first few weeks home were just like my baby, she didn't sleep. And I'm like in a constant state of like, just like lost, like a lost feeling. I was up all the time with her. I would like dread every 3 hours. I knew she was going to wake up and I was going to have to feed her. Okay, I fed her. She's okay now. Every 3 hours she was up again. I have to feed her. And I remember like dreading that time coming. Yeah. I was like counting down until she was going to be up again.
Mm.
On my first appointment back to the gynecologist, my husband had come with me, and he had said, my wife, she's not the same. Something's off with her. And the doctor she asked me, she was like, well, do you want to hurt your baby? And I was like, no. And she was like, okay, then we're all set. And I was like, okay, all right, great. I'm just going to keep on feeling like this. That's great. Yeah.
That was the only question I started about how you were doing?
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
Was if I wanted to hurt my baby or not.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went home. I continued to struggle. I mean, my mom came over one day to help me, and I had like passed out on the couch. My daughter was in her crib screaming, and I had nipples boiling in boiling water on the stove, and the water had evaporated and they were like melting in the pot, and I'm like sleeping through it. That's how like exhausted I was.
Yeah, that's incredibly, you must have just been totally unable to function at that point.
Yeah, I pretty much was, but.
Yeah, it's so hard.
It is. And, I'm like one of those people, I don't like to ask for help. So I'm kind of telling myself like, no, I'm okay. I'm all right. Like, I'm fine. I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And I just kept going and going and going. And I went back to work. It was like right after the 4th of July. So we're talking like maybe 2 months after I had her, which now that I think about it is just beyond crazy. I don't know how I did it all between working and bringing a baby and packing everything and making sure she had everything and going home and taking care of her, being up at night, going back to work again. Like, I honestly don't know how I did it
and
when I think about it now.
Were you working as an RN?
Yes, I was. I was doing home visits.
All right. So are you having like the kind of standard RN shifts that are like 12 hours?
No, I was doing home care. So I would work like 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. When my visits were done for the day, I would go home.
Okay.
Depending on the day.
Okay.
So it's somewhat flexible. And,
so you're totally exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like you're on a hamster wheel and you just keep going and going and going, but you're not really getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Like everything just continues being difficult. Everything is it's hard. And I started to get incredibly frustrated and angry, angry to the point where I didn't know what I was going to do. I was so mad.
Right. Like rage.
Yeah.
Really, really intense.
I ended up reading about it at some point. Mm-hmm. Yes. yelling, anger, frustration. I mean, you know, this continued on. My daughter was like 2 years old. I remember trying to get ready to leave with her in the morning and just being like out of my mind. Like, there's so much to do and I have to be somewhere on time, and how am I gonna, and it's just like, it was so much. And, you know, people love to blow it off. Like, my friend was like, you're just getting to work in the morning. It's not hard. And I would just kind of tell myself, yeah, I know, maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion. Maybe it's me. You know what I mean? Maybe there's something wrong with me that I'm not able to handle that other people obviously can.
Right. That's what you thought at that point, that other people were handling it and you weren't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's what I started to think about, like a lot of different things. Like, well, if this person is doing it, how come I can't do it? How come this happens to me, but it doesn't happen to them? So I believe it was before I had my second baby, I ended up just like getting really upset. I had gone to my primary care. And again, I'm telling her, I don't feel right. Something is wrong. I can't sleep at night. I'm angry. I'm frustrated, not depressed, which is why I didn't think it was postpartum depression. I was like the opposite of it. I was like just angry, frustrated, like go, go, go. My mind was always going. And again, she was just like, you know, you're a mom. You got a lot going on. Basically what she said. And I remember leaving her office and being so mad and like just being done with how I felt, that I went and I found my own psychiatrist and my own therapist by myself.
Good for you.
Because no one else was willing to help me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so frustrating for you.
It is.
I mean, you're actively searching and looking for help. Your husband is even advocating for you and they're like, nah, you're good.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I ended up finding, you know, my own psychiatrist, my own therapist. I'm still with the same therapist, not with the same psychiatrist, a number of reasons. But come to being pregnant with my second baby, now like it really started to hit the fan when I was pregnant with her. I mean, like it all came out, the anxiety part of it.
If we can go back for a second, you said you went to therapy. How old was your first when you went to therapy and got a psychiatrist?
Oh my gosh, 4. This was like, I went on like this for years.
Oh my God. Okay. So 4 years. And that was kind of when you were at the peak of this. And I know you're still with the same therapist now and different psychiatrists, as you said, but was therapy helpful for you? Did it help you cope? Did it help you feel any better during that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you had a bit of recovery?
Yes.
Okay. And then you got pregnant. Your other pregnancy. Okay. All right.
Now my other pregnancy.
Yeah. Okay. So now during this pregnancy, what was going on for you?
The pregnancy was worse than my first. I was sick. I mean, right on through probably to like 20 or 24 weeks.
It's a long time.
And yeah, during my pregnancy, we had gone on a trip. My husband's family lives in Greece. So we went to Greece for a month. So that was absolutely rough.
It was just like,
10 hours on a plane, being nauseous and just being away from home. You know, when you're sick, you kind of want to be home.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a very, very rough trip. And I kind of wonder now why we did that. Like, what were we thinking when we did that?
So you had a 4-year-old and your stepdaughter too?
Yes. She was 8 at the time. Yeah.
Okay. And then pregnant. All right. Yeah.
And then I was pregnant. Yeah. So that happened too when I was pregnant with her, which was semi-traumatizing as well.
Sure. So the very tough pregnancy then?
Yes. And towards the end, I remember being like so scared of having to go through labor again. So my doctor actually scheduled me for a C-section so I wouldn't have to do it again, which was so much easier than what I went through the first time. And I had so many people telling me, why on earth would you have a C-section over a regular delivery? You're having surgery. Why would you do this? Why would you do that? And I'm so happy that I stuck with my initial decision because it was so much easier for me to heal from, to like bounce back from, which was.
Right. I mean, that's so important that you stuck with what you felt like was right for you. It sounds like you were getting a lot of people trying to talk you out of your kind of sense of what you needed.
Yes. It was tough. Actually, my very last appointment before my C-section, I had seen like one of the last doctors in the practice. And she actually came in the room. She was the same as everybody else. She's like, you're having a C-section. Why would you do that? You have a 4-year-old at home. How are you going to take care of her after you have surgery? And I left in tears. And I remember calling my husband and being like, she just told me all of this. I don't know if I should do this or not. Like, should I do it? Should I not? I mean, that a doctor made me feel like that. That's terrible. Like, no support at all.
Right.
So I had my second daughter. My in-laws were here for 2 months when I had her. So that's very trying, you know, having people in your home. I was trying to breastfeed again, and it definitely was a tough time with me and my husband and his family there. You know what I mean?
Sure. Were they there to help?
Yes.
I mean, looking back on it now, it sounds like it was also very stressful.
Yeah, it is. You know, you're trying to like keep people happy while they're in your house. And
like you needed to take care of them.
Yeah, exactly. I was still like, I was really angry, really frustrated. I like started throwing things when I would get really, really mad at the walls. I'd throw things and just like scream like, oh, I'm so glad I don't feel like that anymore.
Yeah, that's so hard because it's so intense.
Yes, it was intense.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep going. My in-laws left. I had a regular summer that summer. I wasn't working. I kind of just stayed home, took care of my kids, and I was with my psychiatrist. I tried Zoloft. That was like the first medicine I tried, and it like changed my life. For like 2 months, I was like over the moon, and I couldn't believe that like I had lived as long as I had without being on any medication.
Oh, right. So how far after the birth of your daughter was this?
Oh my goodness. Like a few weeks after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was like almost right away. She was like, well, why don't we try this? So I did try it. And I think it was giving me a hard time sleeping. So I ended up coming off of it. And to make a long story short, I ended up trying like 4 different medications with her. And I was just getting worse and worse. Like I just kept going downhill. Nothing was working. And I had an incident right before Thanksgiving. So my youngest daughter, she's probably like 7 or 8 months old. I was in my kitchen. My husband was at work. I was washing dishes or something. And we had like this wall and it fell off of the wall. So wine bottles and liquor bottles broke. So my husband, he came home, and this is when he like got concerned. He was like, you know, she had to call me to come home because to help her clean up because she didn't know what to do. And that afternoon, I ended up getting so upset that I developed a tremor in my right hand. It's the same day like my tremor began. Like when I would get upset, my hand would shake incessantly all by itself. I had no control over it. So my husband brought me to the doctor, brought me to my primary care because I had been seeing the psychiatrist that obviously wasn't helping. And this is another time he stood up and was like, something is wrong. We're doing this, we're doing that. But now she has this like terrible shaking hand when she gets upset. So this is when they switched me to a psychiatrist that I had actually wanted to see in the first place.
They told you that you didn't need to see a psychiatrist who worked with moms.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
She's still my psychiatrist today.
Great. You found somebody who actually helped you. What did she do for you?
Well, for starters, she listened, and she actually not understood how I felt, but listened to how I felt. Yeah.
It's so simple and apparently very hard for people to do.
Right. Apparently. I talked to so many doctors and I had gotten nowhere.
I'm so sorry. So this psychiatrist does work with moms, and she knew how to listen. And then what happened from there?
I had another episode it was right around Christmas time. I wouldn't call it psychosis so much, but I had woken up in the middle of the night and I thought that there was a woman running around the house. And I said that I could hear her like running around. And I was like really freaked out. I remember being upset about it.
So at this point, that psychiatrist that you had met with, did she find a medication that did work for you?
No, I'm not there yet.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. So you met a psychiatrist who works with moms, but you guys have not found a medication that works yet. And so you're having this other episode.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm all sped up now.
Okay. At this point, when this happened, I was off all my medication because they were just trying to let me clear out of everything that I had going on before we started something else.
Mm-hmm.
When I switched from her, do you know what I mean? I switched doctors and she stopped everything.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's another big thing that happened.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, are you pretty concerned? I mean, you're having this experience and it sounds like, how did you feel about that experience?
What scared me was that I knew it wasn't real, but I was hearing it anyways.
Okay.
That's what like really scared me.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had some sense for yourself that like something strange or, new was going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and that was the only time that it happened that I like heard something weird or anything like that. That was it. There was like one incident.
Mm-hmm. How old is your daughter at this point?
Still not even a year, probably like 10 months old.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I can probably actually make my way to last summer. So my daughter had passed one. She's like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
This is when like the depression side started to hit me. Was like last May, last June. I was having a really hard time sleeping, a really hard time. Taking care of myself. I was showering like every 3 to 4 days, having a hard time taking care of my kids. My kids are home for the summer and I'm in bed and, they're downstairs eating, like living off of cereal until my husband would come home.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up becoming suicidal and I wanted to run away. And when I called my psychiatrist and she suggested going into a partial hospitalization program.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that last August, which helped tremendously. I came out like a new person.
Oh, great.
It was great.
Was this a partial hospitalization for perinatal moms or just a general population?
General population.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So partial hospitalization is like most days going into some type of group support and medication management.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. Okay. And I was really scared, but it ended up like being one of the best decisions that I've made. It was really positive.
Oh, that's great. That's so nice to hear. I'm really glad that you're sharing that. And then I'm so glad that you had a good and positive experience because I think, like you said, it was like a scary thing, but it turned out to be helpful and supportive for you.
Yeah, it was great. I left there and, I had attended so many group sessions where people actually listened to me and like they understood where I was coming from a depression and an anxiety side.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have people to relate to.
That's really, really good. So this whole time you didn't have enough support, it sounds like.
Yeah. I struggled for a very long time.
Right. So you had a therapist still, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then the psychiatrist that you had, you didn't find a medication that worked for you until you went to the partial hospitalization?
Yes. I was on a medication that I'm still taking today, but it wasn't even close to a dose that I take now. It was upped and upped and upped.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. So, by the time you started to feel a little bit better, how old was your daughter? A year and a half?
Yeah.
And your other daughter is now 5.5.
Right.
It's a long time. It's a very long time to suffer. I'm so sad for you that you reached out to help and really you didn't get what you needed.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to kind of share this with everybody so that other moms know. Right. Because I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah. So I would like to get to that in just a moment, but are there any other parts of your story and your healing, like after the partial hospitalization, that continued to help you feel better?
Yeah, I started taking more time for me. I learned that laundry and dishes can sit.
Right.
I have a new rule after 8:00, whatever's not done isn't done until tomorrow. That's like my rule.
Awesome. I love that rule. I might take that rule for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like my favorite one, countdown to 8:00. All right, That's it. All done.
Right. Good for you.
Thanks. I came out of the hospitalization program. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety, major depressive disorder, PTSD, and panic. So I had like a lot up against me.
Yeah.
That I've been continuing working through.
Right. And you're still working on it. You're working on it currently, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I'm like a year and 2 months out of partial, and it's a constant daily, like task by task thing sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's like a big learning thing.
Oh, sure. I mean, it sounds like you put some really great supportive practices in place, like, setting your 8 o'clock limit and taking more time for yourself. What else have you found that has helped you to feel better?
I started crocheting, so that's actually very relaxing. I was surprised, but it is.
That's great. Kind of meditative.
And it's nice because, I like put on a movie and I just do that. And it's nice to have like a little project going on.
Mm-hmm.
I am going back to work actually in the next few weeks because I finally feel like I'm ready to do that.
That's great.
Before I didn't want to because I was so my mind was so crazy. I was afraid I was going to hurt somebody. So I said, I'm going to stay away from it. But I finally feel like I could go back and be a nurse again.
Oh, that's nice. It sounds like you're getting back to yourself, feeling like yourself a little more.
Yeah. I journal a lot. I write a lot of stuff down. That's been a big help for me. Forgetfulness was always a big problem for me. I would get lost, in the mall parking lot. Where did I leave my car? I told my husband, I was like, if I ever call you and I say I'm lost, I'm really not kidding. I really am lost.
That's when things were at their worst. You were just forgetting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, at their worst. I mean, I couldn't go grocery shopping when I was at my worst because it's just it's overwhelming being in the grocery store and just trying to think of what you need for the week and where it is and how much it's going to cost. And I couldn't grocery shop either.
Right.
There was very little things I could do.
Right. So the overwhelm makes that kind of multitasking really difficult. It's hard to, especially when there's a lot of noise around and a lot of things happening. It's just all overwhelming.
Yes, it is, definitely.
You're making your way through. I mean, really, it sounds like you were advocating for yourself to get to this point. Well, you're working so hard on it. What do you want other people to know?
I just want other moms to know that it's not all like rainbows and butterflies like it looks like on TV. It's definitely harder than you can expect. It's important to take advice, but also to make your own decisions and know that you're making the best decision for yourself and your family. And that's all that matters is you're doing what you can.
Yeah, that's great. And what about
something I've learned?
Oh, sure. I mean, and you've had to learn the hard way. I mean, you had to learn to advocate for yourself. So unfortunately, people weren't listening to you.
Right.
People that you were relying on to know how to help you weren't listening.
Yes, I know doctors and I know.
Mm-hmm. That's so.
It's a lot to look back on and think about.
Yeah, it is. How do you feel looking back on it, kind of talking through it right now, how far you've come?
I always say I never realized how bad things were until they started getting better.
I'm so glad you said that. I think a lot of people can really resonate with that. That is a true statement of what recovery feels like.
Yeah. And it's great. I'm able to I get up now before my kids get up in the morning, which I was never able to. I was dead in bed until the last possible minute.
Mm-hmm.
I get them ready for school. I bring them to school. I feel like I have a little bit of life in me instead of just dragging and just tripping everywhere throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely been a big change.
That's fantastic. I guess if you feel like saying anything, what would you say to moms who get to that, just feel like giving in?
I think that sometimes you don't realize what's going on, and that's why it's important to at least talk to your spouse or a friend, just so they kind of have an insight of what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. It's important to just keep going. I mean, if it wasn't for my kids, I wouldn't have bothered staying around. I would have either left or I was suicidal. So, but I just kept telling myself, your girls need you. They need you to be here. And that's kind of what kept me going. But you got to stick to your gut and trust yourself with how you feel. And if you don't feel right, then you don't feel right, and don't let anybody else tell you different.
Right. I mean, you did. Unfortunately, those people were telling you that oh, you're fine, and minimizing how you feel. But it was so persistent. You kept finding out that you weren't okay. You weren't feeling okay.
Right.
In terms of giving hope to other people who are going through similar stuff, I think this is an incredibly great message of hope that you, through all of that, you did find healing and that you're still working on it. You're still healing, and this takes some time, but you're, invested in it now. Oh
yeah. Big investment, lots of time, lots of energy, lots of retraining myself. You have to say no sometimes. You have to tell people when you need help, all these little rules that and it's not second nature. I've actually had to teach myself to do these things as I go along because my second nature was the complete opposite.
To do everything.
So it's definitely, exactly. It's definitely not a boom, you wake up one day and you're better. It's a very long process, and you have good days and bad days, and it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay if you have to stay in bed for a day. Yeah. That's all right. Yeah. Something else I've learned.
Right. This is such a real and beautiful picture of what recovery can look like, just in terms of all of these things that you're describing, that, it doesn't happen overnight and you have some bad days. These are incredibly important messages. And I hope that people, especially people who are currently struggling, can hear is that even though today might feel bad, tomorrow might feel different, and just keep plugging at self-care and setting the boundaries. And that's what it's actually like on the ground.
It is not easy.
Right. It's not easy. If I could go back in time for you, I would wish that people listened to you right away so that you didn't have to struggle for this long.
Yes. Well, also, I spoke up as much as I could, but I really could have caused a few scenes, and I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't. I kind of just was like, yeah, you're right. I feel like this because of that, instead of actually, it took that long for me to actually finally put my foot down. And that's another reason why it's taking me so long to get better, was because I was 4 years in before I ever got any help.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the longer period of time that you're struggling, the longer it takes to get better. Is that what it feels like? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it makes sense that you have that kind of feeling of being able to look back on it and wish you had done some things differently. And also in the moment, when you're having such a hard time, sometimes you are just doing the best that you can because of your low energy, or, even not, for me anyways, I'm thinking about my own story, not wanting to admit that it's as bad as it is and not wanting to feel like you're weak or whatever, those messages we tell ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
That kind of prevents us from getting the help that we need earlier, I think.
Yeah. You can talk yourself right out of it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's so hard. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your recovery, or messages you'd like to give to other moms or families?
Yes. Moms are very important in families. When you're talking about postpartum depression or anxiety, it doesn't just affect the mom. It affects mom. It affects mom and dad's relationship. It affects mom and kids' relationships. And mom is like the heart of the house. Nothing happens without mom. If I'm sick for 2 days, forget it.
Right. Which also
shambles.
Right. That's part of the pressure, right? It's just to keep doing everything. Yeah. So exactly. we should be paying attention to what mom's needs are.
Yeah. And give yourself more credit for everything that you do.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Well, I thank you again so much for taking the time to share your story and being honest with us and just really open so that other people who are going through it can hear what it's like to go through this and what it's like to get better.
Well, thank you for letting me share it.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jessica, for sharing your story. It is really powerful to be able to hear from you and hear from other moms who have been through so much and have found their way to healing. I think there's a lot more that we can do to help people like Jessica. And what I really love about her message is that how powerful it is for her to just have someone listen, have someone really listen to her, and how healing that was for her, in addition to the other things she's now doing for herself and the support that she's getting from providers. If this story resonated for you or someone you know is having a hard time, there is help available. There are resources available. You can go to www.postpartum.net and look for support or care providers who are near you. Thank you so much for being with us. Until next time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please share this podcast. Together we can support moms and families so that no one has to deal with this alone. Come connect with us at momandmind.com.